this is the Slido link for those people who prefer written text to spoken. But if anyone has got a burning question they want to ask right now, I believe there is a ball, otherwise known as a microphone, but with fur or something on it. That's a soft microphone, which we can use for the audience. If anyone's got an immediate question. No? If not, then I'll move straight to the Slido ones, because I believe we've got some on there, which is always really great to see, basically. For Joe, obviously there's always one straight in there, which is what is your number one README that you've seen? I know I've got a few favorite READMEs. And actually, I want an answer from all of you on this.
You know what? I'm going to say this, and then I know it's changed recently, but the Next and Vercel READMEs are really good and like a brilliant onboarding for someone who had never used Next at all. Like I really loved it, but I know they've also done a huge amount of updating recently that I haven't looked at. So I haven't looked at it in like 9 months, so don't hold me to that. It might be terrible now, but it was great. Let's assume it's still great.
And Elle, do you have a favorite?
My answer was stolen. I was going to say the Next.js one. It is very, very good. Like you said, it's really good. If you've never used Next before, it's really easy to understand, and the way that they word it is just really friendly for anyone.
I promise that we're not actually sponsored by a sandwich. And Stephanie, do you have a fave?
I just gave a whole talk about server-side rendering. I was going to say Next.js as well. Yeah, I hate being put on the spot, but
sorry.
Yeah, there's some great READMEs out there. I just can't think of them right now. I'll get back to you.
I personally really like the React Native ones. That's like how I learned React Native. My first job was in React Native, and I was like, I'm wholly dependent on these docs, and they really, they paid off. So yeah, it was awesome. I don't know if you've enjoyed the recent move towards gamified docs, with like progress bars, the little questions at the end that you get a tick.
Yeah. I mean, I think again we're trying to make sure that we're keeping our developers in that flow state. So like you get that nice little boost after going like, oh, you've completed this, you've completed this, you've completed that, rather than presenting them with this huge wall of text, which, like I said, like I see a wall of text and my eyes just sort of. But if I get a little check every time, I'm like, I'm a winner. This is going to be great.
It's so true. It reminds me of like TDD in general, which I think is perfect for flow state, because you just see green ticks come up, and it doesn't matter how trivial your test is. It doesn't even matter that you're probably going to delete it in favor of a better test maybe later. But those green ticks.
It's them feedback loops again. Quick feedback loops is just essential.
Any other comments on it? Yeah. So I've got another question. Again, the linting rules. I think we were all wondering whether anyone will allow us to have a line that long, basically.
You can fight for it. I believe in you. Like Joe said, actually 80 is too short. I don't know whether I should admit that I don't use it.
Yes, this was my next question.
Ellie's about to fall flat on her face. I just feel like I know that was only one example. I hope you can start to see that the shape of your code implies the intentionality of the code. And, even if you don't stick with an increased past 80 character limit, I hope that the takeaway that I want you to see is how much you can affect what your reader is understanding by the shape of what you are writing. And, if you can't increase your character length, then white space is your friend. So make sure that you're putting lots of nice new lines in so that I can understand, like, this is a block that does a thing. And once I've understood what that block does, I can kind of forget it and move on to the next block. Like, I'm not trying to hold lots of things in my head. But yeah, once you start doing that, you will start to see that maybe things can sit on one line, especially things like imports and stuff like that, where you don't want them to have to head compute. You don't want them to have to think about it all the time. And then you can start to argue with the people who have the say in what the character limit is. So yeah, try it. Try it and see.
Healthy discussion in the workplace is always good. I don't know, but like, so what if you don't have a linter, but everyone else does? And then every time they save one of your documents, you have, the world's biggest Git diff.
Yes, I do. Yes, and I will fully admit that it doesn't, that approach doesn't work if you're working on large projects. You need to make a collaborative decision. A lot of the work that I do is writing tutorials and writing demos, and that's when legibility and understandability, is that a word? Sure. Is so important. Like, I don't want someone who's reading my demo to be like, what are all these imports? Like, doesn't matter. They get imported. The bit that you need to understand is, what this function is doing. So especially when you're writing to teach, it's important that you get that shape right. And you can make decisions about what's best for your team, but consider that, I know not many of us are hiring right now, but when you're onboarding new people into your team, it's the same scenario. They need to understand what the code is doing. So legibility, absolutely top priority.
I really think this relates a lot to a lot of things in your talk, Elle, as well, because like usability is not just for the users, it's for us as well.
Yeah, 100%. Like when you open that page that's got all of those imports in right at the top, and you're just like, how on earth am I supposed to work out what this thing does? Or like you open you're reviewing someone's pull request, and half of the Git changes are just like import, and then this big function at the end, and it's like it almost impacts your ability to be able to review that code or to understand, okay, what is the change this person's actually made, and what is just the linter being linter and linting stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have any ways of getting around it in your work?
So what I found actually recently is I've never really thought about this before, but if you split up your Git like commits quite nicely, you can almost impact the way that people can review your code. It's kind of a tangent, but like instead of just seeing that big wall of like, here's 1,000 lines of code that have changed, you can go into each individual commit and be like, oh, this is where I changed this function. And it requires a lot of pre-planning. So if you're kind of fixing something really quickly, it might not be applicable. But if you've got time to spend and time to commit to that, you can kind of help in those ways, and then you can mitigate for the linter coming in and linting stuff for you. Or I always, sometimes in like the lint settings that I have, it tells me about them, but I've already pushed the changes, so then I have to come back. I always have that PR, that commit that's like, oops, the linter. Like, oh, I forgot to remove that thing, or forgot to name that thing correctly. But yeah, the linters can be helpful, but they can also cause problems for sure.
And to add to that, you can have a bunch of, commit hooks and commit rules. So like if somebody has done something egregious, they're not allowed to commit it. They have to change it.
Yeah, we have a linter that's like, no. But go back, make those changes.
Can't even push. Yeah, can't even make it public. Do you have any favourite linting rules or technique for?
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously I'm not creating public APIs, but the code that I write is for people in my team. And I want to convey an intention through that code. And so I definitely, that point resonated with me. And when I'm reviewing other people's codes, I don't necessarily care about like, oh, they've not written it exactly the same way that I would have written it. What's important for me is that I can understand what they were trying to do and see that what they've written does that effectively. And being able to format your code in a way that that intention comes across clearly, I can picture that being massively beneficial. I work in a globally remote team, and people will be making changes, and I think having a linter, obviously it just runs and fixes all of the linting errors on commit, and so I don't have to think about it, and that ensures that when I'm looking at a PR that I'm not seeing like a bunch of like white space change because that is consistent through everybody's PRs. And I think when you're working with a bunch of people, you just if that's one less thing to worry about in your cognitive load, is that I know that the linting will just run automatically, so I don't think about it. But now I do think about it, right? So,
now we all want to turn the linter off. So.
Well, yeah, I think the way that I would always approach working with my team is that any sort of technical decision that we make about we maybe want to increase the number of characters you can include on the line. I think in a healthy team, you would always be able to have that discussion within your team and make that decision on a team basis, rather than it being dictated to you from principal staff engineer that you've never met before, right? It's kind of you should be able to kind of decide the best way to work with your team within your team, because no one knows your team, your colleagues, better than you do.
Yeah, very true, very true. I think developers love talking about the way they work as well. So a good opportunity to bring those discussions.
And sometimes it's the quiet person in the team who just has a really strong opinion. They're oh my god, you're just wow, I never expected that. But I love that. I love having debates with people and being able to sort of think about things differently. And when you think about things differently, that's when innovation happens, and that's what we want to encourage, really.
Very true. Yeah, diversity of thought, right? To do should be in caps, by the way. So do you have a set of linting rules that you actually have in public? I guess you don't use the linter, so you don't need them, right?
Yeah, I don't at all. I'm sorry, that's not very helpful of me, but no. I've got an ultra widescreen at home, so
Stephanie, I've got a question about the server components. Yeah. Obviously, they're going to be released soon. Mm-hmm. So how can we, in the interim, make sure that we're building single-page applications responsibly and not creating the chunky cat?
Oh, wow. I mean, the chunky cat is kind of cute as well, though. No, I think what's important to understand is that there are trade-offs. I think, obviously, when we looked at the BBC website before compared to the Dazn website, there was a trade-off in terms of performance, but the benefits were great as well. And I think the way that the web is at the moment, I mean, I'm pretty sure people in the room don't stop using LinkedIn because they have to wait 3 seconds before the page loads. And so you're able to kind of make a sort of an informed decision. Obviously, there'll be some things such as Moment.js is a really popular library for date formatting, and it's known for being incredibly chunky boy. And so there's alternatives that you can use, Day.js or whatever, and kind of just being able to search and find those alternatives that can help to reduce your bundle size. Obviously, things like server-side rendering and frameworks like Next.js and Gatsby can help you to show something to users quicker. React also has some other cool features that were released in version 18, such as suspense and concurrency, so you're able to show something to the user while asynchronous operations are happening, and you're able to kind of create that, as Elle was saying, the illusion of something happening, right? And I think that's what people want to know. I think what's worrying, what people don't like about, say, slow client-side client-side rendering is that you don't really see anything until all the bundles are downloaded. But if you're able to kind of show something, like a progress bar or something to let the user know that something is happening, then they're reassured that way. And as Elle said, sometimes if things happen too quickly, then that seems a bit suspicious as well sometimes. There's other ways as well. Obviously, when you run a React application, you'll still have to download the React bundle and stuff like that. You have to do that regardless. But you can make use of features such as lazy loading within React to make sure that you're not downloading bundles that you don't need. That you download what you need when you need it, rather than downloading it all up front. So there's quite a few strategies that you can use. And yeah, I think obviously if speed is important to your organization, say if you're doing a real-time trading application, you want to see the latest stock prices, then speed is of the essence. But in most cases, if you're just if you're Beamery, for example, building something for HR and talent, I don't think shaving off a second off the performance is going to lose somebody a job opportunity, for example, in which case people will be willing to wait to have that rich functionality that's going to be really valuable to them.
Very true. Elle, do you have any ways that you obviously showed us a few of the skeletons. Do you have any other tricks for just avoiding the general like load time issues?
Something that I like, it's so simple, but I always forget to think about it, is like compress your images. Like you don't need all those kilobytes for that one image on your site. Like go and stick it in a site that will reduce that size. Like small things like that can make a really big difference. And even just like run your site through a page speed tester. Google has free ones. You can see how speedy your pages are, and they even have suggestions to things you can fix it. And I say that as a web engineer. You don't just have to know how to optimize your site. It's not like, oh, you're just supposed to know that. You can go and Google will tell you how you can optimize your site, and you can research that. And there's so many small, tiny improvements that you can make that make those tiny little differences that can like compound together to make a larger difference in making your page as speedy as possible.
Very true. Also helps with like Lighthouse and things for the accessibility. Yeah, it's all just in your dev tools already.
You don't have to just know it in your brain.
Yeah, and I'll add to that as well, that obviously having some sort of observability on your front end, so you're able to sort of like capture information about how real users use your application and how long they're waiting, what devices they're using, what their connection is, or whatever. That's also a really useful source of information. So more about the observability. Yes.
That's true, because there might be times when actually you don't want to be taxing your server with lots of stuff, and instead you know for sure that you've got people with high-end devices, and rather than pushing too much stuff onto your server, you actually need to be offloading some things. Is that something that's come up for you before?
I think it's all about knowing who your users are, really. I think the sort of business that I've been working in mainly most of my career, it will be for internal clients or other businesses. We know that businesses tend to have a good stable internet connection wherever they are in the world. But being able to, if you know that there's going to be users who will have a slower connection, then it makes sense to, let's store information that we've already downloaded and store it in browser storage, so then we can show that to people when they load up and they have something to look at, right? But I think you don't have to over optimize your website too early. Like if you understand your users, then you can make sensible decisions about how much effort is worth putting in to kind of get a good outcome for them, because at the end of the day, it's the user's experience of the website that really matters.
Very true, yeah. Or our experience if we're using the software. And a quick question about the dev advocacy. Like, is that something that you, I think, how do you measure success, not just like in your, as a in DX in general?
The eternal question, the entire of dev advocacy would like to know what success metrics are. I hate to say it, it depends. You need to get to know your audience, you need to know what's important to them, and then you need to build out, these are, so our audience, we've found they're falling off at this page. Like, how do we make sure that they get to the end of the thing? Or our audience wants more of this particular type of content, so we need to make more of that content. Like, it's so depends on who your audience is. So the first thing that you need to do is start getting that feedback, reducing feedback cycle time, making sure that you're actioning that feedback so that you learn who your audience is, and then it's making user personas so that you understand each thing that you're doing, whether it's targeted at which different person. It's not just I wrote 1,000 blog posts and got 20 retweets, so therefore success. Sadly.
Close the loop, guys. Close the loop. And speaking of closing the loop, we've got some amazing questions that I can't even ask. So you guys are just all going to have to come to the pub. Because I think our speakers are going to join us there. Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. So a few announcements to wrap up briefly. Basically, I'd like you to start off by thanking our incredible speakers for being such a Do you want to be one of them? If so, have a think about your topic. There's a QR code here. I don't know if I've mentioned it already, but you can close the loop by scanning that QR code and submitting your talk idea. So we accept anyone we accept women and girls in this to do the talks, but we accept anyone to join the community, and we encourage you to, like women you work with, companies that you think might want to sponsor this. We've got another one coming up before Christmas. So yeah, feel free to get in touch. The QR code will do all the hard work for you. And yeah, we especially want to thank our incredible sponsors today, Monzo, for inviting us to their beautiful. The feedback. We want the user feedback. So on there is also some forms that you can fill in to provide us with feedback, ways that we can improve. So if you want to join us for the pub to actually ask your questions on the topics that we've just been discussing, then please join us at the Horse and Groom, which is on Curtin Road, which is a 1-minute walk from here. So I'm going to leave the address up so you can just Google it now, get the info, and then we are unfortunately going to have to leave here, but please come with me. One more surprise. Oh my god. Okay, so apparently you've all picked up a small piece of paper, is that correct? So if you all get out your little pieces of paper now, I can announce the 2 winners of the raffle, who I'm sure will be...
It's just generated.
Great, okay. So our first random number is... I wish I knew all those bingo numbers, and then I could be like... Unbelievable. Number 2. No! Stay in there. That is, I mean... No. Thank you. You'll get a goodie bag in a moment. Okay, next one. 17. Yay! Sit on the front row, guys. That's the tip for next time. And above all, I'd like to thank you all for coming today. It really means a lot to the community. It means a lot to me for my first hosting of this event. And it definitely means a lot to these wonderful women who helped us do this. Thank you, guys.